Hi there students, welcome to this teaching module in economics titled Organization of Data. Well, we're doing a topic from the book Statistics in Economics. We completed the topic Introduction to Statistics and Collection of Data. Now we're moving on to studying of organization of data, which is the next step after we collect data, right? So let's move on. In this lesson, we will study about classification of data, the objectives of data classification, methods of classifying data, and some relevant definitions that we need to know while we are studying statistics. What is classification of data? The objective of data collection is making conclusions which are useful in formulating policies and taking correct decisions. That is, data collected in raw form is to be systematically organized. Classification, the definition. An important method of organization of data is to distribute this into different classes or groups on the basis of their characteristics. This process is known as classification of data. We're talking so much about data. We need to define now what is raw data. Well, data collected in their original form is called as raw data. Now, what does raw data consist of? It consists of observations or variables that are more or less unorganized. Here we have an example. Suppose a statistics class with 60 students were given an examination. Perhaps the marks are out of 100 and the results are shown here below. The data that is collected, that you see here, the collection of marks, without being classified, organized, or processed, is called as raw data. Here we have another example of raw data. This raw data collected is data on the number of smartphones owned per family in a particular locality. So you see, the data is just collected and presented here. It is not even classified, nor organized, nor processed. When we are studying statistics, we come across this term variables a lot. Well, so we need to know what are variables. As you see, the word variable comes from the word vary, V-A-R-Y, which means change. So what are variables? Variables are characteristics which are capable of taking different values. So the values can change. Their characteristics vary or change from observation to observation. Well, variables can be classified into categorical and numerical. When we talk about categorical, we mean data that is more qualitative, like say for example marital status. You could be single or you could be married, or there are even now we hear of people being partners. Yeah, there are various political parties and these keep on changing. Different people have different eye colors, so that also changes from observation to observation. And we also have numerical variables that are discrete or continuous. Discrete variables are those which can be expressed in terms of a single number. For example, I can't say I have 3.5 children. I have 3 children. Yeah, and continuous variables is something that we can express in the form of class intervals or groups. And so we can express weight, voltage, height, income, profit, and so many other variables in this way. And the measures of these variables can change or take different values. Before we even play around with our data, we need to give it some kind of an order. And that brings us to the term array. What is an array? When data or observations are arranged in ascending or descending order, it is called an array. Now we have here raw data 8, 5, 4, 10, 1, 15, 12. When I put it in some ascending order, that is from the lowest to the highest, then I say this is now an array. Also, when I put it in descending order from the highest to the lowest, it also is an array. So data that is placed in rank order, smallest to the largest to the smallest. Here again there is another example. Data in raw form as collected, and data in an ordered array. And in this case it is an array that is in ascending order. Now that we have made ourselves familiar with a couple of terms in statistics that will be coming across quite often, let us now try to understand what are the objectives of classification of data. What do we seek to achieve from classifying data? Well, it helps to present data in a simple form and removes the complexities of data. It brings out similarities and dissimilarities of data and helps in making comparison. It's always easy to compare one set of data with another set of data. So if, for example, if you have two sets of data in tabular form or in graphical form or in the form of pie charts, it's so easy to compare the data, isn't it? It helps in condensing the data, and so once we condense the data and reduce it to a smaller format that is workable, we are able to analyze and interpret the data. Scientific presentation is possible once we classify raw data. It provides a basis for tabulation of data as well. That brings us to studying what are the methods of classifying data. How can we classify data? What are the types of classification? Well, raw data can be classified in various ways depending on the purpose of classification. So here we go. We have the chronological classification, spatial classification, qualitative classification, and quantitative classification. We'll be taking them one at a time. Here's the first one, which is chronological classification of data. Chronological will remind us of time. So when data is classified according to time, it is called chronological classification of data. They are also called as time series. Data is collected either in ascending or descending order with reference to time. Now, time can be expressed in units like years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds, even milliseconds. So here we have a table showing us the number of students in 11th Commerce right from the year 2014 to 2019. And we have classified the number of students where time is concerned, and here the time is in years. So this table is representing a chronological classification of data, an example of chronological classification of data, data that is classified on the basis of time. Well, when in the stock market, for example, you have the market opening at 9 and it closes somewhere about 3:30 where trading starts and ends. And you can track how people buy and sell a particular share every second, every minute, and every hour, right from the time the market opens to when the market closes. So even there we would be using chronological classification of data. The next type of classification of data is called as spatial classification of data or geographical classification of data. So there are two synonymous words here. Under this method, data is classified with reference to geographical areas or places such as countries, states, cities, towns, villages, wards, and so on. Like, for example, what I've shown here in the table. This is an area-wise distribution of students in major cities in Goa. So you have various important cities of our state and the number of students in these cities. So when we express data in terms of the place or area, then we are talking about spatial or geographical classification of data. Now moving on to the qualitative classification of data. Some data cannot be expressed quantitatively. or in terms of numbers. And such data that cannot be expressed in terms of numbers are called as qualities or attributes. Yeah. For example, honesty, intelligence, beauty, and so on. Now, when data is classified on the basis of qualities or attributes, then it is known as qualitative classification of data. For example, nationality. Someone could be an Indian, an American, a British, and so on. Literacy. One could be literate or illiterate. Religion. One could be a Hindu, a Muslim, a Sikh, Jain. Gender. Male, female. Marital status. Single or married. And so on. Such data cannot be measured but can be classified. Here we have an example in the first column where employed can be classified further into educated and uneducated. Unemployed also can be classified as educated and uneducated. Further on, we can classify educated as being male, female, uneducated, male, female, educated, male, female, uneducated, male, female, and so on. Afterwards, we can express it in terms of numbers. How many people are educated, unemployed? How many people are uneducated and employed? And so on. Here again, I have shown an example of qualitative classification. ID number, whether the person is a male or a female, age group, educational level. So here we have qualitative aspect to it, and annual income. So data can be expressed in terms of qualities like gender, educational level or qualification, and so on. That brings us to the last type of classification, and that is quantitative classification. Well, when data is classified according to the size of the attribute, like we saw in the previous two slides where we spoke about the number of people being educated and uneducated and employed, and educated and uneducated and unemployed. So when we give size or assign a numerical value to the attribute, then it's called as quantitative classification. Example: height, weight, age, income, marks of students, profit, loss, expenditure, wages, salaries, and so on. When data collected of such characteristics are grouped into classes, then we say that the classification is quantitative. So here we have two columns, one showing a group of marks from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on, and number of students in that particular group. So here we are expressing data in terms of numbers or numerical values. Here are some important definitions that I need you to know and understand. What are attributes? Well, attributes represent qualitative character of an item. As I told you earlier, beauty, intelligence, nationality, religion, gender, and honesty. So they represent the qualitative character. When you think of the word attributes, you must bring to your mind the word quality or qualitative character. Next term that I need you to define is population. In statistics, the data in a single variable or a set of variables constitutes the population. Population or universe is the subject matter of statistical study in whichever area it may be. Then we have the term frequency. This term you'll be coming across very often as we go on. What is frequency? It is the number of observations corresponding to a particular class interval. Like you saw in the previous slide in quantitative classification of data. Here is another example. Frequency of class interval 20 to 30 is 5. What does this mean? It means that 5 students' marks falls in the range of 20 to 30. So today, apart from learning a lot of terms that we'll be coming across in statistics, terms like attributes, population, frequency, raw data, variables, and so on, we've also learned about the 4 methods of classifying data. The first one, chronological, that is on the basis of time; spatial, that is on the basis of geographical area; qualitative, that is on the basis of attributes or qualities; and quantitative classification, that is on the basis of numerical data or attributing size to qualities. Now I'd like you to do this exercise. After you complete watching the video, I want you to compare quantitative classification with qualitative classification, and I want you to compare chronological classification with spatial classification. So basically what you're going to do here is differentiate between the two of them, that is quantitative with qualitative and chronological against spatial. And then I want you to do another exercise. Here is some raw data given to you. It represents yards produced by 30 carpet looms. How many yards? Yeah. And this data is not in any particular order, but you got to arrange the data in an array, either in ascending order or descending order. So you need to be sharp and observant, and you need to do it right. As always, I like to leave you with a quote based on the topic at hand of the day. And here is a quote by Craig Mundy, who is a senior advisor to the CEO at Microsoft. He says, "Data are becoming the new raw material of business." You see, note that he has used data in its pluralistic form, and he's calling it data are becoming the new raw material of business. And that brings out how important data collection, organizing, classifying, analyzing, and interpreting is, especially in today's business world. It is a raw material of business. How nicely put. I found this lovely little quote, but poetic kind of a quote by someone called Subhatra Ray. And I liked what she said because it has something to do with the topic of the day. She says, classification of data is so important. One collects data, then starts classifying it on the basis of diagrams, either with the help of bar charts or pie charts or tabular charts. I now realize why during graduation we used to draw tabular inference while classifying Aristotle's types of government. College life is the base. What you learn there is quite helpful in the later stages of life. College scores may matter, but what you learn in college matters even more. So students, whatever you're learning here, however small, minuscule it may be, it will come to your use in the later years when you're going to work with a whole lot of data. Maybe you will be studying or doing research, or perhaps you're working for a corporate house, or even you will be entering the banking sector. There you will be involved with all these activities, and so you'll find it very useful. Whatever you've studied will come to play or use in your life in the future. I'll leave you with these thoughts. Thank you so much for giving me a listening ear.